Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on the things within your control. All right, so today's episode is how hierarchy affects us. So within social groups such as work, school, or personal, hierarchy affects how we feel, how we view ourselves and others. It literally is comparing to see where we fit in, to see how we measure up against each other, vying for a higher status in whatever organization that we belong to. The natural inclination is to want to be higher in the totem pole that's being associated with, because it comes with certain perceived benefits such as respect and admiration from those around us. We all have a need to be respected, some more than others, but this reinforces confidence that makes a person feel significant or validated. Being dependent on drawing power from hierarchy status puts greater emphasis on what others think, living up to a certain metric, and if that metric is not consistently met, the risk is being demoted or thought less of, losing respect. Remember, it is human nature that the fall and the failures that we experience hurt much more than the pleasures gained from our achievements. This is part of the social relationships that we all have with each other. We want to be perceived well and accepted by our peers. The better our peers see us, the better we feel about ourselves, and vice versa. The worse our peers see us, the worse we tend to feel about ourselves. And this comes from being with the herd, the village, or the community, because it provides safety and comfort in numbers. When people feel like they belong, it's reassurance that they're taken care of, that it ensures the ability to survive. This is why feeling lonely or being an outsider is seen as a negative, because it can be seen as being vulnerable and not having a certain support that is needed. Many species of animals operate this way to ensure that they survive. Prey animals like horses, wildebeest, and cows, they all stay with each other to have a certain level of protection from predators. Predators like lions and wolves and hyenas all lean on the help of each other. That way, individually, they don't need to hunt every day. They can rely on the collective group to pitch in. Usually, the higher up in status, the more power one has that affects everyone else. This is the ability to lead effectively. The health and the welfare is dependent on those leaders making important decisions. It's not solely based on brute force, but must be accompanied by making good choices for the overall well-being of the organizations that they're leading. Now, brute force can ascend an individual higher, but that alone is not sustainable. Horses have rankings within their herd, and the highest ranking one, usually the female, is going to lead others to food and water and keep them safe and keep them away from danger when they suspect any type of threat. All of this is part of the tendencies that we have, which is why we need to be accepted by others. We'll do things to earn others' respect, and sometimes that means making good choices, but other times it means making poor ones. The younger and inexperienced we are, with very little support, there might be more of an inclination to make poor choices just to fit in, to do what others want of us. Overall, it comes down to how others value us. In Western society, a large determining factor is someone's social economic status. The more money that someone has, the higher they're thought of and better they're treated. This can drive us and motivate us to do certain things like build a massive business or climbing the company ladder with the goal of making a lot of money. With that comes admiration from others. It's very enticing to be admired by others, but even better by the right people that value us for who we are and not just what we have or what we've accomplished. These people will be with us in the good and the bad. The bad times are great because it eventually weeds out those that are just serving their own interest. It's an opportunity to reset to the fundamentals. The tricky part is going to be managing the good times because it can be intoxicating, constantly fixated on being anointed when nobody's there to call out the train that's about to crash. Eventually, this leads to a constant comparison to see who's the best instead of being your best. Your best is good enough when you value yourself well. There constantly seems to be the talk about who's the best in whatever field because it signifies that the best is better than the rest. Okay, great. Whether we're talking about sports teams, athletes, schools, universities, students, cars, shoes, whatever it might be. Best is all relative to a person's perspective. People have different criteria, and there seems to be the notion that everybody needs to agree, or at least a majority. If you ask someone, what is the best barbecue? This is so limiting and excluding the different possibilities. It kind of belittles every other barbecue place. For some, dry barbecue is what's preferred. But instead, what is said is, that's the best barbecue. For others, they may see chopped barbecue lathered in barbecue sauce as best. And this cultivates a thinking that puts others down to highlight their significance. If anybody disagrees with their opinion, then enemies are formed. And this leads to being intolerant of having different opinions and ways of thinking. In the subject matter such as barbecue, this is almost like fighting words, where it's dividing lines to see where you stand. And in a world where we're being assessed by others, determining what value we bring individually, it brings about, if you're not the best, you're just like the rest. Part of this comes from the need to feel significant. We all want to feel that we're valued well and contributing to what we think is a worthy cause. So somebody disagrees with what we're doing or they differ in opinion, it can feel threatening because it challenges what makes us feel significant. This is where those opposing views trigger being against one another. Hierarchy plays a big role in this type of thinking and behavior. It's almost like how we eventually come to view who we are, that our worth is tied to the ranking amongst our peers, or the amount of money that we have, or the amount of responsibility determines our importance. This is dependent on an outside source that props us up. Instead, it should be about building ourselves up internally, where self-confidence is what's relied upon. Hierarchy makes us dependent on how we feel about ourselves. Self-care and self-improvement makes us independent and empowered. Develop the internals and everything else is going to seem a lot less bothersome. So essentially, hierarchy contributes to the amount of confidence we have about ourselves. The higher in ranking in whatever organization that you're in, the greater belief you're going to have within yourself. There's a greater chance of experiencing positive emotions that leads to giving your best effort. The praise that is given or the rewards received in being in a higher position reinforces the good things about you. But the lower you are within that ranking, the less belief you have that you can do great things. There is more likelihood to experience negative emotions and leads to giving less than your best effort. So the orders given or being reprimanded for mistakes reinforces the bad things or the weaknesses where it feels suffocating. It's really a state of being where what you're experiencing is what you're always going to continue to experience. So if you're higher up, you'll continue to feel good. But the further down you are, you'll continue to feel down. It really is a hit or miss cycle that one is in, which can make it feel like it's difficult to get out of it, because much of this comes from our mental framework. So if we think lower of ourselves, then we'll feel that way, and that's reinforced by looking up to everybody else. But if you think higher of yourself, then you'll also feel higher as others are going to be looking up towards you, looking for guidance and direction, or at least giving instructions on what to do. So when we call the shots or when we make certain choices, it makes us empowered. But when we have to follow instructions, then it feels like we don't have the power to affect our own lives for the better. If we just think back to how we survived and how animals survive, hierarchy is a tool to continue to live, but not really thrive. Today, we don't experience the same threat levels as thousands of years ago, where our lives were constantly in danger, but we still operate in the same way. If you look at many of these progressive, innovative companies, they're moving away from these hierarchy structures because they see that it damages morale that's going to affect people giving their best on a consistent basis. Great talent will leave if they're not given the freedom to use their strengths as they see fit. They're willing and confident that they can move on from dead ends, to look past right now and set themselves up for greater opportunities. And it's been known for some time now that middle managers are there mainly just to reinforce that the people that they oversee are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Many proactive company leaders are realizing that with more autonomy given to their employees, they feel empowered, that has produced better results than previously of those commanding orders. There's a bit of rebellion that comes out within each of us when we feel that we have somebody to report to, that they're superior to us, that we have to be checked in like a toddler. It's almost belittling in a way. If that's the thinking, then we're just going back to survival of the fittest. Is that what we want? To just survive? To just get by? To do what was always done in the past because it once worked, yet it's becoming outdated? Habits are hard to kick, but less so when you're willing to admit that there's a better way of doing things. Sometimes that means realizing when something is wrong. But if it's about proving how right one is, even when they're not, then it's all about control, just constantly needing it. If this happens to be the case, where things continue to operate in that rank and file manner, then ultimately what is wanted is obedience. To discourage critical thinking and just do what the higher ups say. Anyone that does not fall in line is a problem, and the problem must be eradicated before it spreads and infects everybody else. Titles in organizations serve a purpose to identify responsibilities, but that eventually gets overlayered of who that person is. So if Charlie works in accounting, it eventually becomes, he's the accountant. The title then becomes the identity of that person, instead of seeing the person first and then what work that they do. If you're not careful to identify and separate what you do in an organization and who you are, they become intertwined and unable to tell where you and the role you do starts and ends. Randall's profession may be a janitor, but that is not who he is. It is what he does to make a living. What we do for a living is not who we are. They are a means to an end. How we live our lives and handle ourselves is what makes us who we are. Come to understand that it's just some title or position. That does not tell your whole story of what you're capable of. Don't think because you start at the bottom, that's all you're ever going to be. There's some really good examples. If you just look at Rodney McMullen, the CEO of Kroger, which is the second largest grocer in the U.S. He started off as a stock boy for Kroger in 1978 and paid his way through college, working there, taking every job in the store from dairy to deli. He eventually worked his way to becoming accounting supervisor, then became a financial analyst for the company. He became the CFO and then took over the CEO role. So Rodney did not allow the title of stock boy to limit him of what he could be. The easy thing to do is to give in and say, this is all I'm ever going to be, is a stock boy. But his ambition drove him to believe in himself that he can work his way into things. He wasn't afforded special opportunities, but he made it happen for himself. He's a great example that a title is merely a title, that it doesn't determine what you're ultimately capable of. And many times, most of us don't know what we're really capable of until we actually go out there and try it. We might have an idea, but as you start to take on greater challenges, you're going to be pleasantly surprised about your achievements and have greater self-respect because you chose to make a proactive decision to improve your situation, to improve who you are. But this comes from breaking away from what others see you as, what a group labels you. Avoid living up to their expectations and instead form your own and live up to them. Others may have very low expectations of you, and if you abide by them, you won't stretch past it. But when you have high expectations and you continuously reach for them, eventually you're going to grow into it. For a lot of people, that rank and file type of environment is really restrictive and stifling to who they really are. They're not able to thrive in an environment with so many limitations of what can't be done, operating in a certain framework because certain people are just naturally creative and need space to try different things without being told what to do and how to do it. Significant improvements and great innovations are not done in environments that tell them what to do. They're actually done out of necessities and finding ways to improve things that comes from taking the initiative. The orders are not coming in from the highest ranking official because they're merely keeping things in line. They're too busy frantically being worried that everything is going according to plan, and when they don't, they're constantly putting out fires, freaking out over any little thing. This is a person that heavily relies on that high-ranking title, making them feel like they're somebody, and without it, it can feel scary and empty. Because of this, they need to be validated by others, constantly out to prove their worth. Operating in this capacity can help achieve certain goals because it can motivate someone to put in the work, but that erodes a person's self-worth. This could come from the people that they look up to, emphasizing the importance of status, where being seen by others in a positive light is the driver of one's actions, giving off the appearance that everything is great. Most of us do want to be seen by others where they think well of us, and this is natural to want to be accepted. It starts to become a detriment when what others think is more important than what you think of yourself. And hierarchy can breed this type of perspective to come off strong and demanding respect, almost bordering on fear by those that they oversee or outrank. This creates a sort of mental block to keep people in line. You're in a great place mentally when you're independent of that, where you know that what you think of yourself is way more important than what others do. That the perceived wall of hierarchy is merely a way to function, and it is not the only way. This makes life in general seem less intimidating because you know you can stand up to it, willing to do what's uncomfortable right now so you can spread your wings to eventually soar. Having this outlook is natural for some, while others, it's going to require constant work, but either way, it needs to be developed. Some will have a support system that nurtures these behaviors, and some won't. In a strong and supporting family setting, there's also a hierarchy that proves pivotal in it functioning well. Usually the mother or the father or the guardian is the one is in charge of the overall well-being of the kids or the teenagers that they're overseeing. They're the ones that set the rules and expectations based on what they think is best for everyone involved. Their experience helps them navigate certain obstacles so certain hardships can be avoided. The things like when the parents or the guardian tells the kids, go brush your teeth, wash their hands, and eat their fruits and vegetables so they can maintain their health. These are the things that really make a structural organization function very well. The leaders provide the proper guidance so all those following can develop and grow properly. And in a strong family foundation, it really helps a person navigate their way in whatever structural organization they find themselves in. When the parents can teach the kids to know that their significance is not based on how others view them, but how they view themselves for the better. In doing so, it helps a person handle themselves a lot better and not be dictated by results alone. Learning to separate the title from the person allows a person to break free from being pigeonholed and be what they want to be. Sometimes friends or good mentors provide this type of environment where one feels accepted no matter what, that there are no conditions to feel welcomed, and this takes the pressure off and just being yourself is enough. But hierarchy can make it feel like we are not enough with the wrong perspective. It can give this overhang of being controlled, and what people need is a certain level of autonomy to give their best. Structure is good to have because it can help to develop discipline and helps to stay on track of the things that they need to get done. But so much rigidness can cause much of the enjoyment to be taken out. It's understood the role that hierarchy has. The system is there because it has proven to minimize things going wrong so things can be efficient and smooth. But in more efficiency, it's all about getting production consistently right now. When that starts to take over, it pushes out much of the creativeness, the innovation that can really make things a whole lot better. There actually needs to be specific downtime to unwind and really think things through, as opposed to constantly being on this treadmill of being productive all the time. In getting results right now, it makes one unaware of the change that's coming and being behind when it does arrive. Our minds have a tendency to drift where we're daydreaming about so many different things, and whatever things that we do that's repetitive and monotonous, it really just takes the fun out of it and makes us disengaged. The mind needs stimulation, and when it loses focus, it loses the want to expand on pursuing certain worthwhile ideas. By being able to break free from the need to fit into a structural organization, it means exercising the power that you do have through your decisions and actions. Life in general isn't like school where you gotta ask the teacher to use a bathroom. When you gotta go, you gotta go. What's the alternative? Hold it in? And many of these places of hierarchy often operate the same way, where permission needs to be asked for certain things because the higher-ups lack trust and don't think everyone is capable of being treated as equals. This causes divide and mistrust amongst each other, almost like a hostile, silent environment. It's no surprise why many students don't like school other than to socialize, and why many people don't like their jobs. Control and order are what is wanted over the masses to satisfy the wants of the handful that are on top. If you find yourself questioning the validity or the integrity of how organizations are structured, well, good for you. It means that you can separate yourself from what others want from you and do what's right for you. Many times, these two things are different from each other, and for those that somehow feel forced to comply and just give in, know that it slowly quiets all the great things about you. You can professionally challenge the norm of shutting up and dealing with it. There's a stigma of being a whistleblower that if concerns are raised over what is seen as unethical activity, even if it's openly or quietly accepted, that it somehow makes you weak or a snitch. No, that is just a courageous side on display, working to improve the situation. Think of how we progressed as a society from once working 70 hours a week in agriculture or factories to now the standard being 40 hours a week. This, along with all the other advancements in living quality, human rights, all this was forged by courageous people that stood up to what they deemed wrong or unfair to improve the lives for those in the present and in the future. For some, going against the grain will be more difficult than others, but work to trust yourself so that when things are not the right fit, to be able to stand up or walk away. Sometimes the victory lies in taking the first step in challenging those in charge, keeping them honest, and sometimes it means living the situation completely. I'm not saying to be defiant and break up hierarchy just for the sake of it, but first be able to separate yourself from how others in an organization view you and focus on what you think and feel about yourself. Where you build yourself up to trust the decisions you make. Doing so makes you more independent to live how you see fit. There are many animals that live on their own, like bears, tigers, and wolverines, and people can function effectively in the same way. To break free from needing to be in a hierarchy, know that whatever title you have or don't have, that is not your worth. Place your significance on what is strong and independent of others. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset and live to thrive. All right, until next time.